Hello everyone. Today we are going to do lesson 7, unit 3, Scientists' Achievement. This lesson is prepared and presented by Sami Hamdi, senior high school teacher of English at Bourguiba Pioneer School. And the lesson is also supervised by Mr. Hatem Khalifi, the inspector. Fine, let's start with the roadmap of today's lesson. In other words, the objectives of the lesson. The first thing we are going to do is speak about the qualities of high achievers. Needless to remind you that Unit 3 is about inventive, creative minds. Fine. Now, the second objective is to read a biography and transfer information. In other words, know how to fill in a matrix or a table. 3, read for detailed comprehension and specific details. This is what we call scanning. Number 4, infer meaning of vocabulary from context. Then, as far as the grammar is concerned, we are going to see the relative clauses, identify them, and know how to use them appropriately. Last but not least, the ultimate goal of today's lesson is to write a biography. Now, as I said before, Unit 3 is about inventive, creative minds. That's why I made the choice to start with well-known people whom I consider high achievers, and we will have an idea about their biodata, which might be used later if you want further practice and you want to write biographies. These are useful hints. Okay, the first one is Habiba Ghribi and the sportswoman. You may have a look at the hints, her life details. You may take notes so that you use them later. Fine. The second one is William Shakespeare, the philosopher and the playwright, the poet. And these are the hints about his life. Certainly, you can use them in writing, a guided writing in a biography. Third, Albert Einstein. Fine, so these are the details of his life. You might use them. Nice. Now, as you see, excellency is not confined to one field of study or to one specialty. You see that we have sports, we have physics, we have art or literature, and we have internet, something new. Lina bin Mhanni, peace upon her soul, the blogger. So whatever you choose as a life path, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you succeed. Okay, now the question is, all these people have certain qualities or points in common. Let's see what these people share. Fine, so hard work, dedication, inspiration, perseverance, self-confidence, knowledge, commitment, devotion, and certainly education. Just one remark about some of these expressions. When we say to be devoted to be dedicated to, and to be committed to doing something or something. For example, Lina bin Mhanni was devoted to defending human rights. Fine. Now, before going into reading text, let's have an idea about the main character of our text and read his or her biography. So the first activity is read the biography and fill in the table with the suitable information. Here is the table. What are we supposed to do? We provide the name, of course, the full name, nationality, field of study, and degrees. So while reading this short biography, I would like to mention that most of the time the nationality of the person is not indicated as it is. So you might be given the town or the city or the country, and when you are supposed to give the nationality, be careful. Tunisia is not a nationality, it is a country, so be careful. So give the nationality, be precise in the choice of your pieces of information. Fine. Now, number one, the name is Dr. Mehdi Banna. Certainly, he is Tunisian, and sorry if you know that lesson 7, unit 3 is about Ahmed Zouil, the Egyptian Nobel Prize winner. I said, why not try someone Tunisian? And I found plenty of people who deserve shedding light on them. Field of study, planetary sciences, we will explain it later. Degrees now. He got a degree in electrical engineering from Engineering School of Tunis, ENIT. So he studied most of his life in Tunisia. So he is the outcome of the Tunisian educational system. Then he got a Master of Sciences in Radio Wave Science, and then he went to France to get a PhD or a philosophy doctorate in space telecommunication. Okay? Nice. We go now to our text. I divided the text into 2 parts because a little bit long, and each part is about some questions, or some questions can be answered referring to one of the parts of the text. So the first activity is read the text and tick its genre. What do you mean by genre? It can be a biography, an interview, an opinion poll, a poem, a speech, so on and so forth. Fine. Now the text, this is part 1. Well, now while reading this text and deciding on its type or genre, I would like you to focus on the layout and the punctuation, which might help you. Fine? Good. The second part of the text, almost the same layout with the same punctuation. Now, is the text a biography, an interview, or an opinion poll? Now, how can I know that a text is a biography or this or that? Now, a biography, by definition, tells the story of someone or something, an organization, possibly. So if it is a biography and it is a narrative text, it tells the story, or it is based on events. And events are mainly narrated in the past, and the narrative tense mainly is the simple past. The ideas or the events are ordered chronologically and connected in sequence of events. An interview, however, can be a TV interview, a newspaper interview, etc. Now, in an interview, we have an interviewer, the journalist, or the TV presenter, the radio presenter, who asks questions, and the guest or the interview provide answers. Now, an opinion poll is something completely different. An opinion poll is just you tick an option. So the polled person or people are given questions, and they are provided with options, and just tick one of them. Now, if we focus on the layout and the punctuation of the text, we note that we have questions and then response, a question and a response. So we deduce that it is not a biography, it's not an opinion poll, so it is an interview. Nice. Now let's go into the detailed comprehension of the text. Activity 3. Read and correct these full statements with the precise details from the text. Okay, the statements are: in his childhood, Dr. Banna was fond of physiology. He specialized in space against his will, and nobody inspired Dr. Banna. The first part of the text. While reading, I would like to give some recommendations. Please, in this very question, true, false statements. Number 1, if the instruction says it is false, it's over. You go directly straight away to the justification or to the correction. So no need to say true or false. It's already done. Number 2, now focus on the second part of the instruction with precise details from the text. Possibly they might ask you to use full sentences. So be careful, and it is a matter of decision taking. Read your text carefully, choose your justification, and use it. Fine. Now to the statements. In his childhood, Dr. Benna was fond of physiology. I would like to explain two words. To be fond of something is an expression of likes. As we say, to love something, to be passionate about something. And physiology has nothing to do with physics, of course. It means medicine. Was he really fond of physiology? Certainly he wasn't. And in the text it is said, since my childhood, I have been fascinated with outer space. So we have the reference of time since my childhood, and we have the word fascinated. So it was not something imposed on him. Statement 2. He specialized in space against his will, which means either his family or somebody forced him to do that. Indeed, he says, my passion. So he was passionate about the outer space. And then he says, decided. So it is his own personal decision. Fine. Nobody inspired Dr. Benna. Of course, any high achiever has got a source of inspiration. And the source of inspiration could be a landscape, could be the countryside, could be a person, could be an event, as happened with Alexander Graham Bell. Okay? My undergraduate and my doctorate degree advisors were great sources of inspiration for me. So some of his teachers inspired him. Nice. Okay. Activity 4 now, it is a different question. It is what we call open-ended questions. In this case, we have two ways of answering. So answer the following questions with reference to the text. Question 1, for example, does the background in which one is brought up have an impact on his or her area of interest? In this case, it's not enough to say yes and go home. You need to provide information from the text. You have the choice. Either you copy and paste from the text, or you just give the idea or give the information which suits that question. Question number 2, what was the highlight of Dr. Benna's career? Number 3, Dr. Benna mentions 3 major ingredients of success. Pick them out from his responses. Fine, as I said, while doing an exercise like that, we have to focus on the keywords and focus mainly on what we are supposed to provide. Okay? We have to make expectations and we anticipate the answer by explaining the question or the statement carefully. Fine? Okay, now, does the background in which one is brought up have an impact on his or her area of interest? Most of the high achievers were affected by the background in which they lived. Okay, he says, I am sure that the hot summer nights in my native country, as well as the absence of pollution from city lighting, acted as a catalyst for me. So the atmosphere, even the climate in which he was brought up, had an impact on his future career. What was the highlight of Dr. Benna's career? What do we mean by highlight? It is the turning point, it is a milestone, a remarkable event in his life. He says, my favorite moment was when we received the first data transmitted by the sample analysis from the surface of Mars. And you remember that Dr. Benna is one of the engineers who participated in the launching of the satellite a few weeks ago. So the highlight for him was the first information that came from that satellite. Fine. Dr. Benna mentions 3 major ingredients of success. He says 3 P's, which are passion, patience, and perseverance. And I advise my students to have these 3 qualities. Passion, which means do what you like. Don't do something you don't like. Number 2, be patient. If by chance you have periods of down, don't feel ashamed. Don't lose your self-confidence. Continue. Try and try again. Perseverance, which means achieving one's goals, is not only something that happens in 24 hours. We need continuous work, even if it is most of the time hard. Nice. Now, I extracted a sentence said by Dr. Benna. So, addressing his high school students, Dr. Benna expresses his perspective or his viewpoint towards sciences, physics, biology, etc. He says, remember that beyond the complex mathematical tools often lies a simple and elegant scientific explanation. Now, what are you supposed to do? You have to explain and comment upon this view. Now, number one, you have to explain it. What does he mean by that? And number two, you give your viewpoint, in other words. Now, you have a little time. Now, be careful. When we give a viewpoint, we have to use an expression of opinion. I see, I believe, as far as I see, as far as I'm concerned, I think, so on and so forth. I tried to analyze or to interpret and made Dr. Benna pardon any awkward interpretation of what he says. Dr. Benna tries to show high school student that what seems to be very hard to grasp, to understand when dealing with sciences is in fact simple and beautiful. In other words, students should not fear sciences. On the contrary, they ought to appreciate the simple and nice truth behind any scientific aspect. Well, personally, I think that Dr. Benna is not addressing only students. He is addressing the whole educational system, and myself included. Teachers are included. We should not make the students afraid of sciences. We should not show sciences as a monster. We have to motivate them, to give them self-confidence, and to let them see the beauty of truth behind these sciences. Okay? So this is my interpretation, and you have the right to interpret the way you like. Okay? Nice. Now we go to another comprehension question. How does Dr. Benna, as we started, we said he specialized in planetary sciences. What do we mean by a planetary scientist? Let's see what he says. Fill in the sentence with the part that completes the sentence and gives information about the term planetary scientist. He says, a planetary scientist is a scientist, okay, the missing part, who specializes in studying the planets and small bodies of the solar system, formation, dynamic, composition of their interiors, surfaces, atmospheres, etc. Now, what do we call this part of the sentence? As you see, this part starts with who. And who, we know that it is WH word, use it in WH questions, but it can serve as a relative pronoun. What do we mean by relative pronoun? It is a pronoun that relates to a head noun and gives information about it. In other words, instead of repeating it is a scientist and a scientist is studying, we use a relative pronoun to avoid redundancy and to give extra information in a grammatical sentence without making a mistake. Now the question is, it is called a relative clause simply because a noun phrase does not include a verb. Okay? Number two, the question is this part or is this relative clause an essential part of the sentence? I explain. Could we say a planetary scientist is a scientist and the sentence is over? Does it make sense? Certainly it doesn't, because the head noun here, scientist, is a very large noun, vague. We have millions of scientists and we have a lot of fields of study. We have to specify what type of scientist he is. So, because it is an essential part of the sentence, we call it is a restrictive relative clause. I explain more. Why is it called restrictive? because the head noun scientist is vague, very large. It is an infinite number. We have to restrict it. Which scientist are we dealing with? The one who specializes in studying the planet, etc. It's not the only type of relative clause. Let's see the following sentence. Read this sentence and compare it to the previous one. Nice. Najib Mahfouz, who was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature, died in 2006. What do you notice in this sentence? This relative clause is not an essential part of the sentence, simply because the head noun is well known, and we could skip that relative clause. We could say Najib Mahfouz died in 2006. The sentence gives meaning and grammar is okay. Now, if the relative clause is not essential, it is just additional information, we can do away with it. We call it non-restrictive relative clause. Fine. Now, note that a non-restrictive relative clause should be set between two commas. That's why I have always said that punctuation in English equals grammar. Any punctuation mark is justified with something in grammar. Okay, now remember that when the head noun is vague or unknown, as we had in the first sentence, the previous sentence, in the previous slide, in which we have a scientist is, so we have many scientists. If that noun we refer to with a relative pronoun is unknown, we insert a restrictive relative clause. However, if the head noun is unique, God, mother, or well-known, someone who is famous, renowned worldwide, we use a non-restrictive relative clause just to get or to add extra information. Bear in mind that a non-restrictive relative clause should be set between two commas. Okay, now we are going to have some practice about relative clauses. The question is, join the bits of sentences using the appropriate relative pronoun. Mind your punctuation. Sentence 1, Mohammed Abid is one of those who contributed to the latest space exploration achievement. Tunisian engineer. Nice. The second sentence is, the man who was a teacher of the deaf and dumb, the man invented the telephone. Answer to the first one. Mohammed Abid, who is a Tunisian engineer, was one of those who contributed to the latest space exploration. Answer to sentence 2. The man who invented the telephone, which we mean Alexander Graham Bell, was a teacher of the deaf and dumb. Now note that in the first sentence, the relative clause is between two commas, simply because the head noun is well known, so we need only extra information. It is a non-restrictive relative clause. In the second, when we say the men, we have an infinite number of men. We need something to specify or to restrict. That's why it is called restrictive relative clause. Now let's go to vocabulary. Activity 5, match each word in column A with its closest meaning in column B, of course with reference to the text. Now, the words in column A, all of them figure in the text. In other words, they are used by Dr. Banna. Catalyst, enrolling, skills, endeavor, and thrill. The equivalents in B, talents, excitement, medium, registering, and attempt. Let's think a little bit about it. I would like to say something about medium. Medium is an irregular noun. The plural is media. Fine. Now, the synonym of catalyst is medium, a way, something that helps. And science students know what a catalyst is. It is something that helps accelerate the chemical reactions. Enrolling or registering, skills, talents, and the adjective of skill and talent is someone is skilled and highly skilled, and someone is talented. endeavor, which means an attempt, a thrill. Now, thrill has got many meanings. Thrill could be fear, but in this case, it is the thrill, the excitement of achieving something we have long wanted to achieve. Fine. As I said at the beginning of the lesson, this lesson ends up with writing a biography. So, I'll provide you with some hints about Dr. Tawhida Bishikh, and you are going to write her biography. Now, before writing, I would like you to bear in mind something. A biography is a narrative text, fine, which means that it is based on events and mainly past events. Events should be, it's better be ordered chronologically, and if one knows how to use the past perfect, he or she can resort to what we call flashback or traveling back. It is possible. Then the main tense is the simple past. This does not mean that we use only or exclusively the simple past. Now, the connectors. We know that to make our paragraph or our writing coherent and connected, we need some linkers. The type of linkers that should be used here is the sequence, which give sequence as if we are adding shots of a film to one another. Okay. This is Dr. Tawhida Bishikh, and these are the hints. Birth, January 2, 1909, Tunis. Death, December 6, 2010. Early education, Tunisia's first public school for Muslim girls. After secondary school, traveled to School of Medicine in Paris, pursue her studies. Graduation, earn a degree in medicine in 1936. That's why I chose her. In 1936, you know the situation of the Tunisian people, and mainly if it is a woman or a girl. Fine. Achievements, specializing in gynecology, direct a women's clinic in Tunisia. She was also an active supporter of family planning. In the 90s and 70s of the previous century, instruct doctors in abortion procedures. Fine. Now, I gave this writing to my students, to whom I pass my salutation, and I picked one of their writings to be proofread. This is one of my students' production. Okay? Let's start proofreading this biography. Tawhida Bishikh is a Tunisian doctor. The student said she was born in January the 2nd, 1909. Now, when we mention the date of birth of someone and the day is there, the focus is on the day. So, in goes with months and years. So here we have the second, which means that it is a mistake of preposition or wrong preposition that should be substituted for on January the 2nd, 1909. In Tunisia and died. Here, once again, the student uses in. However, we have December the 6th. He should have said on December the 6th. It is a wrong preposition. I need now, after finishing the first sentence, I need to go back to the second part of the sentence. Tawhida Bishikh is a Tunisian doctor. She was born on January the 2nd, 1909 in Tunis and died. As I said before, it is advisable that the student use chronological order of events. So he or she had better keep the sentence of death or passing away to the end of the biography. We will correct it later. We carry on. In her early education, she studied in Tunisia First Public School. It is a grammar mistake. Indeed, we need the apostrophe S of the possessive. We say Tunisia's First Public School. Then we continue. For Muslim girl. here is a problem of capitalization. M must be capitalized. Fine. Now, then he says, after finishing high school, she traveled to Paris to pursue her education in the medicine school of Paris. And she earned a degree from the medicine school of Paris in 1936. This is, on the one hand, redundancy, repetition, for which there is no need. Second, it is a way of wasting time and wasting space. And we know that the first obstacle that students complain about in this very task of writing is the space provided on the back exam. So, to avoid redundancy and to make the sentence clearer and to save space, we could have resorted to the relative clause that we have just studied. We could say, she traveled to Paris to pursue her education in the medicine school of Paris, from which, or possibly where, she earned a degree in 1936. And I kept that space on purpose to show you that we can save space while writing. In addition, she became a specialist in gynecology. The student said, not only she directed a women's clinic. There is a grammar rule which says, when we begin a sentence with a negative adverb, we need to invert. What does it mean? We need to make an inversion as if we are asking a question. So the right answer is, not only, so it is a grammar mistake, not only did she direct a women's clinic in Tunisia, but also. Fine? Here, the student put a full stop between two clauses which are interdependent. We cannot separate between two clauses of one sentence with full stop, so there is no need for that punctuation mark. Then, the student said, but also she was. And here we have a problem of word order. We say, she was also an active supporter of family planning. Moreover, she spent the 90s and 70s to instruct doctors in abortion procedures. Here is now the final draft, or the edited version. Tawhida Beshikh is a Tunisian doctor who was born on January the 2nd, 1909 in Tunis. In her early education, she studied in Tunisia's first public school for Muslim girls. After finishing high school, she traveled to Paris to pursue her education in the medicine school of Paris, from which she earned a degree in 1936. In addition, she became a specialist in gynecology. Not only did she direct a women's clinic in Tunisia, but she was also an active supporter of family planning. Moreover, she spent the 90s and 70s to instruct doctors in abortion procedures. And here is the correction of the problem of coherence. Eventually, the first Muslim doctor passed away on the 6th of December 2010. Okay, now that we came to the end of this lesson, I would like to say a word of motivation to all the students who are passing the back exam in a few days. As Dr. Banna managed to overcome the obstacles, as Tawhida Beshikh managed to make it to the top, as Habiba Ghribi managed to become an Olympic champion, you, the student of science, can become Dr. Banna. You, the student who is fond of sports, you can become Habib al-Ghribi. You who are fond of medicine, you can be Dr. Beshikh. Now, as Dr. Banna said, we need the 3 P's. I would say, believe in yourself, believe that you can, and as Mahmoud Darwish says, on this land, what makes it worth living? Finally, my warmest thanks to all the team members for their help, advice, and patience. I mean, Mr. Hatem Khlifi, Inspector, Miss Iman Wisleti Sadiqi, School Teacher, Mr. Mohammed Lasad Gara, Bourguiba Pioneer School, and myself, Sami Hamdi, Bourguiba Pioneer School. Finally, best wishes for all the candidates of the back exam. Thank you very much. See you.